Welcome to Legacy Sips and Tips podcast with your geeky host, Lindsay Wheeler, where we talk about everything from death, preparing for your future through estate planning, life, the occasional breakup, entrepreneurship, general nerdery, and of course travel, snowboard, and always wine. Welcome to Legacy Sips and Tips podcast with your host, Lindsay Wheeler, and today we're talking about estate planning is not permanent, or is it? On today's episode, we're talking about estate planning and its permanence, if you will. Is it permanent? Is it changeable? We don't know. Just kidding, we do know. Why I talk about this is that when people are creating their estate plan, sometimes they happen to spiral and rabbit hole way too far down. Then they decide that they can't make a decision because it's too much for them, and then they stop the process, or they just don't get it in place at all because they get this paralysis or decision paralysis, if you will. So what I tell people when they're starting to think about their estate plan or they're setting up their estate plan is let's think about what would happen in the next 3 to 5 years. Okay. Then you can make decisions that, who's going to manage my estate plan or my trust in the next 3 to 5 years if, God forbid, something really bad happened. Who do I want my stuff to go to in the next 3 to 5 years? Do I have underage children that need to have parameters put into place? Do I need to have guardianship nominations for the next 3 to 5 years for my underage children? That's where we can start crafting your estate plan and your revocable living trust in a more efficient manner. We're not going to think about 50 years from now that my kid is married, maybe divorced, has 2 other kids of their own, owns a house, went through a bankruptcy. We know it's too far. It's too far. Those are too many what ifs. We can't think that far ahead. So let's think every 3 to 5 years, because why? It gets it going. For one, it gets your estate plan in place. At least you've done something. You have something in place for if something bad happens. 2, you should review your estate plan and your revocable living trust every 3 to 5 years, or on those major instances that you would change your insurance designation. So you get married, you get divorced, you have a child, those things. If you were going to change your insurance, you should look at your estate plan at that time as well, or your kids become adults, whatever it is. So that's how we always say to kind of frame your mind around these decision makings of the next 3 to 5 years. And then we can actually get something going and get something in place. Easy peasy at that point. No one's freaking out. No one's, death spiraling, if you will, to the future. 40 years from now, what's going to happen? Because hopefully maybe we're all cyborgs at that point and we all live in a machine. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you pass away, 4 days later after you get everything in place. It happens. So let's not worry about the crazy minutia 40, 50 years from now. Let's worry about the present next 3 to 5 years. That's the easiest way to get it going. So that's when I say estate planning isn't permanent, because we're not going that far down. We don't have to make those hard and fast decisions for 40 years from now. We just need to make some decisions for the now. With that being said, when you do a revocable living trust, it isn't permanent in the sense because it is a revocable living trust. That means you are able to revoke it entirely. Say you don't want it anymore. Take it away. Say you want to change those things. Maybe, you have parameters for your children set into place right now because they're younger, okay? And then hopefully maybe, when they turn 18, you're like, my kid is going to be an accountant. They have more money invested than I do. They can definitely have their beneficiary designation at 18. They are good to go. Or conversely, yeah, I got my 18-year-old on there and I thought they were going to be an accountant, but they still want to be a rocker and travel and go to raves in Ibiza. They're not really good with money. Let's put more parameters in there for them until maybe they change their mind again. That's the cool thing about revocable living trusts is they flow with your life. They flow with your circumstances and with your loved ones' circumstances or your heirs. So nothing is set in stone in that regard. You can change your mind on who's going to manage the trust. So maybe you had your sister, but then, maybe your sister got sick and is no longer with us. So obviously that needs to be changed. What if you have your brother in there and brother starts developing some weird habits? Maybe they like to go to the casino a little too much and you don't really want them to be the manager of your estate. We're going to change that. Maybe you have a friend that you were really close to when you created this estate plan and you're no longer close with them. Maybe they moved away and they kind of fell out of touch with you and you probably don't need them to manage your estate at that point. You can change and put somebody else in there. You can put a financial institution, a third-party fiduciary to manage your trust as well if you don't have any persons that you trust or are available to do those things for you. So that's the cool thing about estate planning and revocable living trusts, is that you control them and they change with your life. So super cool. That's the neat thing about it. So don't get hung up when you're trying to create this. Just get something done. Just get something on paper. Heck, we can change it 2 months from now if you really wanted to. We could change it a year from now. We could change it 40 years from now. That's the really cool thing about it. You retain that control. You're able to manage it, and you're able to do those things because it flows with your life. Today's wine of the week is Barefoot. Don't laugh, everyone. I know we have some really nice wines featured on this podcast, but Barefoot, again, don't laugh, everyone, is technically a very solid, substantial wine that you know exactly what you're going to get when you buy this. Someone brings it to you as a gift, don't snark at them. Don't look at them with disdain. They may just not know, and they're trying to bring you a nice gift. Barefoot's been around forever. They have won awards. I don't know if they're actual awards or their own awards. I don't really know. But they know that they're a budget wine. They're fun. This is a good mixer if you're going to make it like a sangria or something like that, cooking wine. People who don't know wine and you're just going to try to bring a nice gift, this is a good solid thing. You know exactly what you're going to get out of this bottle every single time because it is consistent. So don't laugh. Barefoot is not terrible. It may not be your palate, but it might be somebody else's palate because they do sell a shit ton of wine. So I always say the wine you like is the wine that's best. So, we could snark all day about this, but if somebody really likes this and enjoys it, then they really like and enjoy it, and that's great. So always think about that when we think about wine, because I know we like to be kind of snobby, and myself included, but, don't laugh, everyone. Just what you like is what you like, and that's okay. The cool thing about estate planning too is that because it is revocable and it does flow with your life, oftentimes people will get them set up, of course, when you have younger children, you maybe just got married, maybe you just had your first child, you just bought your first house, great. You're getting everything in order, you're adulting like a champ, you have your estate plan in place. Well, 20 years from now passes and everything is still good, but now you want your kids to manage your assets for you because they're good, they're in that position to do so, and you want your kids to still do those things for you, as opposed to maybe your parents who are now older and aging, because that's oftentimes when we are younger and we get our estate plan in place, we typically, we see putting your parents on there to manage those things because your parents have always taken care of everything for you, and now you're still an adult, but you're still kind of a young adult, and you still want your parents to have that guidance for you. Well, now 20 years from now have passed, you've done a good job and raised your children, they're good to go, and your parents have progressed 20 years from now and are probably a little bit older, and you might be stepping into that role to manage their stuff for them and not them for you. So that's again where we have that change. We will just do a quick amendment, putting that information in there that we're switching out successor trustees. So it wasn't going to be Bob and Smith, my parents. Now we're going to have, my children, Ann and Sally, whatever it is. So you can do that. That's the cool thing about it. So try not to get so paralyzed, if you will. I don't even think that's a word, but I'm going to use it right now. Don't get that paralysis of, oh my gosh, I have to think about all these scenarios and all these contingency plans and all of these things. You don't have to do that. Just think the next 1 to 3 years even, maybe the next year if you get really hung up. Just think about if something were to happen with you in the next year, what would that look like? And then the following year, you can look at it again. You're one of those people who are high strung. You have that anxiety. You can't make those decisions. Just give me the next 6 months, And then from there, we just keep amending it or reviewing it and making sure everything flows with your life. So it feels like a very permanent thing because we're dealing with death, and that is the ultimate permanence. But really, it's not. And that's the cool thing about these documents is they do flow with your life. With that, so I always deal with revocable living trusts because that's what I prefer. I like them because they are changeable. They're not set in stone. You have more control over your assets and managing that day to day. We do have permanent estate plans and permanent trusts, and those are called our irrevocable trusts. And again, with the name, it's irrevocable. You are not able to change that. I don't handle those. Oftentimes practitioners like them because there's tax benefits for it. There's some advantages to it. I won't get into that because if you are interested in that, you can go down that rabbit hole. But the disadvantages that I see with that is I had a client, for instance, who had a revocable living trust. Great. He wanted to make some changes to that revocable living trust. But with that, he was advised at some point to set up irrevocable trusts for his children for specific investments that he had. Okay, great. 20 years ago, when he set these irrevocable trusts up for a substantial amount of money for these investments to go to specific children, they were all in good standings. So the disadvantage of that is that he had a falling out with his child, and he does not want them to have, I think it was like $400,000 or $500,000 that was set into this account. That's a substantial amount of money that now, unfortunately, is going to go to this kid who hasn't talked to his dad in about 15 years. That sucks. He had good intentions of setting it up back in the day. I'm sure he was advised for the benefits of doing so, and he thought he was going to do a good job on that. But he is now locked in that money and that that distribution through that irrevocable trust, because again, it is irrevocable. So there are advantages to that. Always check with your practitioner, your state, your laws, your financial advisors on why you would maybe want an irrevocable trust. But for the majority of us, normal stuff, normal assets, a revocable living trust is what most people opt to have, because it gives you that control and that ability to make changes and do what you want to do with your stuff from day one, as opposed to being completely locked out. Because I don't know about you, my life changes a lot. I have nice things that I like, interests I like, things I don't like. It's ADHD thing, I like the same thing for the next 30 days, and then 2 days after that 30-day mark, I don't want to touch it ever again. That's how it works. That's how natural people are. Most of us are not set in stone for the next 40, 50, 60, 70 years. So that's the advantage of a revocable living trust versus, an irrevocable trust. So again, always check with your practitioners of what would be the best for your situation, of course. And if you have questions on how that works or getting that set up, or if you do have decision paralysis, again, we have a nice workbook that you can get through to get some of those hard questions answered for yourself. Or you can, of course, hit me up and answer or ask me those questions, and we can work through that if you have some kind of decision paralysis and help you get past that hurdle of your mortality, because we're dealing with that, or trying to make those hard and fast decisions. Again, break it down for yourself, just like goal setting. What's it look like in the next 6 months, the next year, the next 3, the next 5? Maybe we'll stop there. We don't need to go any further than that on these decisions, because we're going to review it every 3 to 5 years anyways. So of course, when you have questions, let me know. And when you think of death, think of me. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you found value, please like, subscribe, and share. And be sure to follow me on all the socials at Sips and Tips with Lindsay. And of course, you can always go to my website, sipsandtipswithlindsay.com, to find more information about estate planning, business, snowboard, travel, and of course, wine. As always, we have to get the legal stuff out of the way. I went to law school, so you don't have to. However, we have to read the special disclaimer that I am not a practicing attorney. I am not your attorney. I am not offering any legal advice in any content or any episode. All content is for your information and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for seeking your own legal advice from your own attorney or other professionals such as a CPA or financial advisor. I cannot give legal advice and do not offer any legal services or legal advice, but I do offer some fun and educational content for you to enjoy.